All right, so welcome back. This video is going to be about how to design a program. Now, I should preface this by saying that instead of writing your own program, you should join a training group or hire a coach. If for whatever reason you don't want to do those things, maybe cost, then I'll run you through, I guess, an off the top of the head sort of blueprint, or at least the process that I go through in terms of, I guess, thought process. So the first thing is you're going to ask the client how many days a week they want to train. If they don't have a preference, I personally think 4 days a week is best. Now, that is a broad statement. There might be contexts where a 5 time a week split allows you to have like a slightly higher frequency for a certain muscle group, and maybe it gives you like the flexibility that you're looking for, but I personally think that the 4 times a week upper lower is the best split. Now, you could argue and say that, you know, based on the weekly net stimulus thing and everything that Paul has said, that, you know, maybe 3 times full body is better. I don't know if the difference between twice a week and 3 times a week is going to be like huge. I think maybe it's been slightly overhyped, and that's coming from someone who is mentoring with Chris. I'm not saying Chris is overhyping it. I think TikTok is overhyping it. So yes, full body is great. Yes, you can do full body 3 times a week, and that allows some muscles to have a 3 times frequency, and that's great. But I still like upper lower, and you might run that like upper lower rest, rest, and that's your whole week done. You could of course do upper lower rest, repeat. Now that would be a split that operates outside of a 7-day cycle, and that's totally fine. The only thing there is that you're not training on the same days every week, which can be a bit annoying. So let me readjust this mic. So let's say that the client says, I want to train 4 days a week. Awesome. They ask you, they say, you know, what about your opinion? I always say 4 times a week. Now, if you're writing your own program and you're doing a 4-day split, here's what you should do. You've got to ask yourself whether you want to prioritize pecs, delts, back, or arms. Let's, for the sake of this example, say that you're a normal proportion person and you kind of just want to prioritize your entire upper body, which just means that you don't want any priority at all. So what you would do, in my opinion, is you start with pecs. It seems to be the most logical thing. When you look at a physique, the eyes often go to the pecs and the shoulders. So you start with pecs because doing pecs with fresh shoulders makes more sense to me than doing shoulders first and then going into pecs with like sore delts. So that's kind of the rationale for me saying that pecs should go first. So let's say on a Monday, you're going to do pecs first. Just do 2 sets of a flat press. That's all you really need for this session, this Monday session in our hypothetical program. So you've done some pressing. You might go, okay, well, since I want to stay nice and proportioned, I don't want to give too much priority to the pressing muscles, I'm going to do a pulling movement second. So you just do like a chest supported row. Now we've hit pecs, we've hit traps and rear delts, potentially some lats depending on the row. You might go back to another pushing muscle, so you might go to lateral raises. You do a couple sets there. Ask yourself, what haven't we done yet? You haven't done a pure lat movement. Again, depending on the type of row you're doing for the traps, you might need a lat movement, its own movement. So you just do a normal frontal plane pull down. So we've done pecs, we've done a row, we've done side delts, and then you've done lats, and all that leaves is arms. So you do biceps and triceps. Now, it literally is so simple. Like, that was such a simple explanation, and yet people are, I think, intentionally complicating this, because I can do that, you know, distracted, without really even thinking or looking at it. Like, it's such a simple formula, and people sit down and write programs and they still can't come up with that. Now, that's just a random order of exercises, you know. You could also do pecs, delts, traps, lats. So pushing, pulling, arms. You could start, let's say you want to prioritize lats. You start with a frontal plane pull down. You start with the traditional lat pull down. That's not a problem. Then go into your pecs. Then go delts, then traps, then arms. You might want some extra priority in the arms. Wow, that's noisy. That is noisy. You might want some extra priority in the arms. So you do your pressing movements. So you might do pecs and then immediately go into triceps. Now, you probably shouldn't do triceps before pecs, in my opinion. But if you wanted to, you could do triceps and then a pec deck, right? So if you want to get creative and bring the arms up and you want to think about it, you might think triceps and then a pec press, maybe not the best idea, but triceps and then a pec deck where we're not using the tricep because the elbow stays constant and we're just training pure adduction, maybe that's a better idea. So you can go triceps, pec deck, lat pull down, row, lateral raises, bicep curl. Easy. You might want to do some bicep priority. So you might go row, bicep curl, lat pull down, pecs, side delts, triceps last. I still wouldn't put biceps before back because, one, I mean, your biceps just are not as important as your back in terms of overall physique development. If someone has lacking arms, it doesn't look amazing, but if someone's back is lacking, like their entire back, that's probably a bit of a problem. And maybe that's my biased take as someone who doesn't struggle to grow their arms, but that's just my opinion. So I wouldn't do biceps before your main pulling movements. I wouldn't do triceps before your main pressing. Now, something I see that I do not like is an incline press and a shoulder press on the same day. That to me doesn't make any sense at all. So let's break this down from an anatomical perspective, and then I promise we'll move on to the lower body sessions as well. What does the incline press train? Well, from about here to here, your upper pec has the best leverage. And then above there, your front delt has the best leverage. Now, important thing to understand about leverage is that just because something has the best leverage does not mean the other thing is not being trained. You're still sending central motor command to the front delt throughout the entire range of motion. It's just not as much as the upper pec. So, even though the incline press is technically an upper pec exercise, you're still hitting front delts. And I would say you're still hitting front delts to the point that you probably don't need to train them again for the rest of that session. So to then go and do a shoulder press movement straight after incline press doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, it doesn't make any sense anatomically, certainly, but it doesn't make any sense to me even when I try to think of it like a bro. Like, sometimes I try to get out of the optimal headspace and think of things like a bro thinks of things, and I just can't rationalize this decision because it's literally an incline press, and then you put the seat up a little bit and you just do more of an incline press. Not efficient, bordering on redundant. Don't do incline press into shoulder press or shoulder press into incline press. That is just my opinion. Again, do whatever you want. I shouldn't say don't do it. Do whatever you want, but I wouldn't do it. Now, we've kind of touched on pecs, we touched on the incline press, the shoulders. When it comes to your lateral raises for your side delt, just pick any lateral raise variation. We saw that study recently showing that it doesn't matter if it's lengthened, shortened, mid-range, whatever. Just pick a lateral raise, it will work. Simple. If you're training lats, do a pull down. If you want to train them out in front of your body, that's okay too. Now, when it comes to redundancy, let's talk lats and traps. Let's say I'm doing an upper body, a trap row rather. Let's say I'm doing a trap row, chest supported T-bar. Let's say that I want to get my arm out here, further away from my body when I'm rowing, because that's going to be more traps rear delt, less lat, because obviously the further away from the body you are, the less lat there is, because it loses leverage. So, if you're doing a movement out here, a row, you can pretty much guarantee that you're really not using much lat at all, maybe some thoracic lat out here, but very minimal. You could technically go then do a single arm lat row in the sagittal plane, and it wouldn't be redundant. But if your trap row has your elbow quite close to your body like this, and you're rowing in here, you're getting shoulder extension, and you're getting thoracic, you're getting scapular retraction. You are training lats and traps and rear delts and terries and whatever else. To do a chest supported row where your elbow is quite tucked and you're definitely hitting quite a bit of lats, to do that and then to go do a single arm lat row, I wouldn't say it's redundant, but it's getting close, because this is a sagittal plane T-bar row where my elbows are tucked, and then I go and do a single arm sagittal plane row. Yes, I'm using less traps in my single arm because I'm trying to train the lats, but it's pretty much the same muscle and the same movement, same joint angle, whatever. I won't make the claim it's redundant, because if you want to maximize muscle growth, you need isolation work as well. But it's important to consider when it comes to volume selection, because let's say for whatever reason, you wanted to do 3 sets of a T-bar. I would only do 2, but you want to do 3. And then you go and do 3 sets of a single arm row. That's 6 sets of one muscle, the lat, in the same plane, in the same joint angle. That'd be redundant. But if you wanted to do 2 sets of the T-bar, where you're getting traps and lats and rear delts, and then you want to go maximize your lat stimulus for that session by doing another single arm row, maybe a set or 2, I wouldn't say that was redundant. So it's important to understand biomechanics, anatomy, and especially physiology in terms of stimulus when it comes to programming, because most people would just do, oh yeah, this is definitely for my traps, and then I'm pretty sure this is for my lats, and then they do the movements so bad that they're pretty much training the same muscles anyway, and it's just a bit of a shit show. So put a little bit of thought into this stuff when you're doing your own program, you know? Don't do an incline press and then a shoulder press, because it's pretty much the same movement. Don't do heaps of rowing for your traps and lats, and then go do heaps of lats in the same joint angle, same plane, everything. Just have a think about this stuff. Now, if you're doing, again, this row out here where you're super far away, super abducted, sure, go do some lats in the sagittal plane. However, if your row is a lot of traps, a lot of lats at the same time, which some machines are, you can then just do a lat pull down. Just do a traditional lat pull down in the frontal plane, adduction. Because then you've trained scapular retraction, shoulder extension in the row at the same time, because those 2 movements occur, and then you've gone and done a frontal plane pull down. So none of that is redundant. And when it comes to maximizing lat growth, I haven't looked deep into this theory, but I don't know if we have to actually train shoulder extension on its own in like the single arm row to maximize lat growth. I would say you could get pretty close to maximizing with just a pull down and just any chest support row like a T-bar where you're hitting traps and lats. You could argue adding a single arm row gives you a bit extra. I'd probably agree, but like the difference is, you know, minimal. So if your rows involve a lot of lats and traps, maybe just do the frontal plane pull down. Try it, give it a go. Maybe don't do any single arm work for the lats and just see how the progression is on your lats. It's just an interesting thought. So what have we covered? We covered delts and pecs. If you want to put triceps first, just do the pec deck. So arms, we haven't talked about arms. When it comes to bicep training, I have a suspicion to maximize growth, we only need to do two things. We need to train the biceps from about 0 degrees of elbow flexion, so maybe the extended position, maybe just before it, so maybe 10 to 15 degrees of flexion, all the way up to 90 degrees. That is the first thing you need to do. And the second thing you need to do to maximize bicep growth is to have a tricep support during that curl. So, a preacher curl or an incline dumbbell curl. Obviously a standing curl is hardest here because this is your lever arm, this is the axis of rotation, here is gravity, it forms a right angle. That is when it's hardest, but if you can make it hardest down here in that more lengthened position, it's probably better. We've also seen studies recently show that the biceps kind of grow maximally if you train them here, if you train them here. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. In my opinion, you just need a full range of motion. Don't think too hard about the sciencey stuff because we're not even really sure. And that's why it's hard to explain, because we really don't know. We theorize that maybe they grow better at longer lengths because of the length tension relationship, but then you have studies show that even in a shortened curl, it produces the same growth of the lengthened curl, and so who knows? So, when it comes to choosing your bicep exercises, a preacher curl, a dumbbell incline curl where you have a tricep support, anything where you're stable. You don't need to do stretch curls. You don't need to do the Dr. Mike, chest up, shoulders back, shoulder extension curl down here with 5 pounds. You don't need to do that because there's a difference between lengthening in accordance with the length tension relationship and stretching. And obviously lengthening and stretching are two different things. Lengthening my bicep would be bringing my arm close to full elbow extension, wouldn't it? This would be shortening, this would be lengthening. Now stretching would be all the way back here because the bicep attaches to the shoulder. You do not need to stretch, you just need to lengthen. Get your arm in full extension or close to it, whatever you prefer, it's not going to make a difference. So, that's our first upper session done. That was 20 minutes, so I'm going to speed up, but the rest of it's easier. Leg session A. On Tuesday, for example, you're going to do your primary squatting movement or your primary hinging movement depending on your priority. We're going to assume earlier in the week we have a greater potential for growth because we are fresher. I'm just going to check the time because I've got to cook dinner very soon. So, when it comes to your first lower session, if you want to prioritize quads, do a hack squat. If you want to prioritize hamstrings and adductors, do the stiff leg deadlift. Let's say we're going to prioritize quads, 2 sets of hack squat, 2 sets of leg extension, and that's your quads done for our first lower session. You then go into, let's say, some seated hamstring curls, and you might do 2 to 3 sets. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing 3 sets because we're only going to do 3 sets in this entire workout for hamstrings. So we've got 2 sets of hack squat, 2 leg extension, 3 seated curl, and then we throw in either glutes, if you want to throw in glutes, or calf raises. You might even do another set of adductors, maybe a set, because we're going to train some adductors on our hack squat, right? So if we're going to put adductors in, we only do 1 or 2 sets here. And then you can do 3 sets of calves because it's calves and it doesn't matter anyway. Now that's our quad focused or anterior focused quads and adductors leg day. While we're on the topic of leg day, let's do the second one so you guys can remember, because it'll be easier to understand. So that's our first leg day. Our second leg day might be posterior focused. And we're going to start with a primary compound movement, tick a few boxes like the stiff leg deadlift, which is going to give us hamstrings and adductors. And it's going to be more or less adductors depending how deep you go. If you don't go that deep, it might be more hamstrings. If you go quite deep, like in a traditional stiff leg deadlift, it might be more adductors. From there, you might do 2 sets of that, and then you might do 1 set of lying curls to train knee flexion. Done. That's hamstrings done for the entire week. 3 sets on the first day, 2 sets of stiff leg deadlift, and then 1 set of lying curls. We're also obviously going to train quads as well on this day. So you might do 1 set of leg press and 1 set of leg extension. You might just do 2 sets of leg extension, no leg press at all. You might do 2 sets of leg press, no leg extension at all, or vice versa, whatever. Pretty simple. Then you could do maybe some glutes. Maybe you want to train glutes, so you do some hip thrusts, and then you throw in calves. It is so simple. Stable movements, not too high in volume, using a 2 times frequency. I mean, it really is this simple. I'm trying to make this as applicable as I possibly can for you guys. Obviously, if we had a more advanced lifter, it'd take some more thought. If we had someone trying to specialize in certain areas, it would take some more thought. Someone with tricky equipment or maybe an injury, it would take some more thought. This is just the most simple way I can put it. Those are our leg days done. So we've got to do our second upper day to finish off the week. So you might do Monday upper, Tuesday lower, Thursday upper, Friday lower, or Saturday lower, just itchy. So our second upper day, we started on the other day with, let's say we did a flat press, depending on, whether we do the triceps or the pec deck. Let's say for the sake of this example, our first upper day was flat press. Well, you could just do incline press. You don't have to do pec deck. It's not necessary. So let's say you do flat press, incline press. That's your pecs done for the week. Done. 2 sets on the other day, or 2 sets of flat press, 1 set of pec deck, 2 sets of incline. There are so many ways you can do it. Let's just say we do 2 sets of flat, 2 sets of incline, and we're done. We then go into maybe some lateral raises if you want to prioritize those. You could then go into another chest supported row, and then you just do whatever lat movement you haven't already done. So if on the first session you did sagittal plane single arm, on the second session you do frontal plane lat pull down. If you had done frontal plane lat pull down on the first day, on the second day you just do your single arm rows in the sagittal plane. It is really that simple. And then of course you go into your triceps and biceps to finish up the session. Now, if you do an overhead tricep movement on Monday, do a tricep movement by your side on Thursday, or vice versa. If you do a movement for the biceps on Monday that's hardest down here, maybe on Thursday you do a movement for the biceps that's hardest here. So you might do a preacher curl that's hardest in the bottom, and an alternating dumbbell curl that's hardest in this more shortened position at about that mid-range. You can do both bicep movements in the lengthened position as well, of course, and that would maybe theoretically be better, but it doesn't hurt at all to just do an alternating curl. So that is like 30 minutes, how to write a 4-day upper lower program. I don't know if it made that much sense because I'm just yapping. But it really is simple, guys. I'll quickly recap it and then I'll wrap it up and I'll do the rest of my steps without boring you guys. So upper lower, in my opinion, one of the best splits. Maybe full body is better. Let's just say, for the sake of this example, you want to write a 4-day upper lower program. You start with your pushing. You don't need to do pec deck. You can just do flat press, incline press. You then go into your rowing movements or your delt movements depending on your priorities. For me, my back is more important than my delts right now. So I go pressing, pulling, delts, arms. I'll say it one more time. Pressing, pulling, delts, arms. I'm strong enough that I cannot do 2 presses in the same session. Now you might say, what about JP? What about Jordan Peters? He does multiple pressing. I am not Jordan Peters. I'm strong. I'm not strong like Jordan Peters, and I'm not gifted like Jordan Peters. Now, I could theoretically, maybe I'm overstating. Maybe I could do 2 presses in the same workout. Maybe I could do a flat press and a shoulder press, but the way I train, the weights that I push, and the amount of ego that I use probably wouldn't survive 2 presses. I have a long wingspan, 6'3", so it's a lot of range of motion for me. I could do 2 presses if I had to, I guess, but I don't want to. I don't think I need to press for my delts. Right now, for me, I think I can just do my lateral raises and I'm good. So pressing, pulling, delts, arms. Pressing, pulling, delts, arms. Write that down. Quad focus leg day. Squat, leg extension, done. Squat, leg extension, done. Squat, leg extension, adductors, glutes, hamstrings, calves. Any combination of those, you don't have to do glutes. Leg day B. Primary hinge movement, RDL, stiff leg deadlift. Or glutes, if you're a chick or you're riding for a chick. So primary posterior movement, more hamstrings or more glutes, then quads, then calves, maybe you throw adductors in there somewhere. So easy. Second upper day, do whatever pressing variation you didn't do on the first one. So if you did incline, do flat. If you did flat, do incline. If you did a lat pull down here, do a lat pull down here. If you did a lat pull down here, do a lat pull down here. If you did let's say you did a chest supported row on one day, maybe the other day you just do a Kelso shrug because the traps don't attach to the arm, so you don't actually have to move your arm to maximize trap growth. I mean, you probably should in practice, but in theory, you can just do a Kelso shrug. So if you do a chest supported row, it's totally fine to do the same one again or a different one, a different chest supported row, that's totally fine. Not redundant in my opinion, but you could do a Kelso shrug. And then if you did a tricep movement by your side, you could do another tricep movement by your side on the other day. But if you did overhead on Monday, do by your side on Thursday. If you did by your side on Monday, do overhead on Thursday. Do I think you need to do overhead triceps? Probably not. Should you? Maybe. I don't know. We don't know everything. And then if you did a bicep movement in the lengthened position, maybe do another one in the lengthened position, or do a curl that's hardest at 90 degrees. That's so easy. That's so simple. I mean, it sounds simple to me. Hopefully it's simple to everyone watching. So what about volume, intensity? Well, it depends, and I can't tell you exactly, but 1 to 3 sets of everything. I mean, I can tell you 1 to 3 sets of everything, right? Within that range, I can't be more specific without seeing you, knowing you. Intensity. With intensity, you should start the block slightly easier at 1 to 2 reps in reserve and finish the block at 1 rep in reserve or 0 to 1 reps in reserve or 0 reps in reserve, or failure, whatever you prefer, whatever your body likes. If your body doesn't like going to 0 reps in reserve, don't. If you feel like you can handle it, maybe you'll get some extra gains. Again, we can only theorize the stimulating reps model, the effective reps theory. We can only theorize these things based on studies done on other things. Now, there are obviously intensity studies done, but intensity studies done on untrained individuals are not very convincing to me. I am not an untrained individual. I train pretty fucking hard. Maybe it would be a different outcome for me. You know, so with intensity, do what you like. I go to failure quite often, even though I know I probably don't need to. I enjoy it. When I'm programming, if I think a client can train a bit harder, I give them 0 reps in reserve. Sorry, I meant if I think a client should train a bit harder. If I think a client is undershooting, I give them 0 reps in reserve. If I think they always adhere to my prescription, maybe I don't write 0 reps in reserve as much. So if someone's undershooting and you're a coach, you need to encourage them to go to failure because their version of it isn't actually failure, if that makes sense. So if I write 0 reps in reserve, they still might have 1 left in the tank. But if I write 1 RAR, which is 1 left, there might be 2 or 3 left. So there's always a bit of mind games when it comes to coaching as well. So intensity, start slightly higher, start higher on your compound movements, train your isolation movements closer to failure, train the movements later in your session closer to failure because those guys have fatigue present. So when you do your first movement, maybe you only have to go to 1 rep in reserve because you're fresh. By the time you get to biceps last, probably go to failure toward the second half of the block or very close to it because you have fatigue present. So those sets aren't as meaningful. So what have we covered? We covered the split, the exercises, so many variations of the exercises. We did intensity, we did volume. What else? Tempo. You don't need a specific tempo. Control the weight, control the change of direction, standardize your range of motion, lift with a tempo that you find enjoyable. If you think that slower eccentrics is more fun, do it. If you think that moving a little faster is more fun, do it. If I was telling you what I thought was the most optimal, I would just say, 1 to 2 seconds in that range where it looks nice. It always depends on what it looks like, not however many seconds it is, because it could look like shit and be 4 seconds, and it could look really good and be 1 second. So who knows? So tempo, bit arbitrary, not very useful. Just use good control, use the same range of motion every set, every rep, and every week so that you can track progressive overload. So that's pretty much it. That was training splits in 35 minutes. Obviously just 1 training split, and a 5-day program is a bit harder to write, and a 3-day program is definitely harder to write. But that's really simple, guys, and I hope that was useful. If you've made it this far, leave a comment. If you made it this far, maybe check out my course, because I do this for a living. I teach coaches how to coach for a living. Maybe you want to train like me, so you check out my coaching application. All these things you can find in my Instagram, which should be linked in my YouTube. If you made it this far and you're not interested in those things, that's totally fine. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Since you guys seem to enjoy that last one, I'm going to keep making these. You like them, I like them, and my steps are less boring. That is a win for everybody. So for the last however many minutes of this video, I'm going to talk about myself. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm being serious. I am actually going to talk about myself. So I haven't been pressing recently because my AC joint's a bit fucked. I did it because, or it happened because I was gym pinning 60 kilos to one of the pec presses. I'm decently strong. I was gym pinning 60 kilos and it was going really, really well. I take suitable jumps. Maybe I train a bit harder than I should, but whatever. I was doing incline Smith and I changed to the incline plate loaded prime press, and I just got way too keen one week. The first week I added it in, and the second week I came back, I was hurting. Now, when it first happened, I knew it was an AC joint injury because I do rehab for a living as well. That's actually my formal degree. My education is in rehabilitation. And I knew it was my AC joint. It was tender to touch. It hurt in these overhead positions. Pressing hurt, rowing hurt. I knew it was the AC. The few nights after, I could barely move my arm. Like going to bed was awful. Couldn't sleep on it. Touching was sore. So bad, so bad. And it got a bit better, and I was like, okay, maybe it was just a bit of a flare up. Maybe I'm okay. Let's add pressing. You know, like let's just keep doing our pressing. We'll pull the weight back, but let's just keep pressing. That did not go down well. So then we pulled the pressing right back. You know, 1 set instead of 2. Pulled the intensity back. Still not getting better. Rowing was hurting. So if you guys don't know, with an AC joint injury, it's just like your entire shoulder hurts. Like it's obviously the joint here, the acromioclavicular joint, which is the acromion off your scapula, and your clavicle, which is your collarbone, and they hurt where they combine. But it just feels like hell. And being out here when you have an AC joint injury is really painful. So a press, a row, a pec deck out here is awful. Even a lateral raise can be pretty shit. And usually for AC joint injuries, the solution is just time off pressing. So now, a few weeks later, I've had to go to 2 sets of pec deck on a Monday, and that's it. And that's all I can handle, which is kind of shitty. But I guess it's a nice lesson for me to sort of pump the brakes a bit. I don't have to use my ego as much. I don't have to show off for Instagram. I can just train normally. Some of you guys might understand if you do Instagram or not, but because I use my training clips for my business, I always feel compelled to be impressive. So it's a lot of pressure on me to like be strong, look strong, move well, always be performing. So like sometimes I will, like let's say I think the suitable loading is the gym pin plus 17 kilos. I'll just do 20 because 20 looks better than 17, and I know it's going on Instagram. And I know that is stupid, but as a coach, people might watch my video for a bit longer if I have 20 kilos added, which is a nice big round blue plate, versus if I only had 17 kilos added, which is a yellow and a 2.5 or whatever. So sometimes I'm compelled to load more than I should. And I think that probably led to the shoulder. You know, instead of doing 3.75 plates, I just do 4 plates because it looks better. You know, the difference might be minimal, but I always opt for the heavier one because it looks better. So it was definitely my own fault, ego lifting, training too hard, not thinking enough, but it's a bit of a do what I say, not what I do type situation for you guys. Be safe, have fun, train hard, but not too hard. And I need to take some of that advice for myself. So that's kind of a bit of an update on my shoulder. We're about a week or 2 into just only pec deck, and I feel really good. This range has like 0 feeling associated to it, which is nice. I can kind of feel it up here a little bit, but by no means is it painful. I would predict 1 block of pec deck going from a 1 times frequency, eventually back to a 2 times frequency should be fine. And then eventually I'll add back in the flat press and then the incline press last, because the incline press I don't even like and probably is more stressful for the joint. So that was a little bit of an update for you guys. Maybe you had noticed I wasn't pressing heavy in my videos. Either way, that's an update.